Normandy turned into hell, where visibility rarely exceeded 10 meters. The American army, accustomed to maneuver warfare in open spaces, found itself trapped in the maze of the bocage, hedgerows that became ideal fortifications for the Germans. The ordinary Garand, the pride of the infantry, proved almost useless against them. Bullets sank into earthen banks and stone walls. To survive and keep moving, soldiers had to turn rifles into something else. A small metal attachment changed close combat, but the price of turning a personal weapon into pocket artillery was monstrous. This is why the solution became both salvation and curse for the soldier in Normandy. 1944, Normandy. You hear a shot, see a flash, but the enemy is gone, absorbed by earth and branches. American troops, expecting a swift breakthrough, ran into the bocage, a maze of old hedgerows and banks. For German units, this landscape was perfect defense. Infantry sat in holes, behind walls, inside houses turned into pillboxes. Garand bullets sank into banks or ricocheted off stones, doing little damage. The soldiers saw the enemy only at the moment of attack and could not reach him behind cover. A frontal advance became a meat grinder. When direct fire stopped solving the problem, the Americans understood that the only way to drive Germans from their holes was to throw a surprise behind them. By screwing a steel tube onto the barrel of the Garand, a soldier became a personal artillery crew. The M7 grenade launcher was frighteningly simple. The tube changed the rifle from a shooting tool into a throwing machine. To fire, the fighter inserted a blank cartridge. Powder gases created pressure inside the attachment and launched a heavy grenade up to 100 meters. For the infantryman, this was a leap. He no longer had to wait for mortars. He could strike an embrasure or throw explosives into a courtyard where a machine gunner was hiding. The rifle stopped being only a rifle and became a means of suppression. But this power demanded payment, and not only in the weight of extra gear. The haversack now held not only food, but a kit for destroying what waited around the next bend. The assortment for the M7 turned an infantryman into a universal destroyer. Fragmentation grenades for trenches, smoke for maneuver, and anti-tank-shaped charges, heat capable of piercing light armor. Tactical flexibility was high, but reality differed from manuals. Grenades were heavy, detonators demanded caution, and the main danger became the soldier's own mistake. If a grenade stuck in the attachment or left at the wrong angle, the explosion could happen too close. Using this kit in the noise and panic of battle was far harder than doing it on a range. There were no rangefinders, only primitive sight marks, shaking hands, and the knowledge that there might be no second attempt. Firing the M7 required intuition. The infantryman had to calculate elevation, wind, and distance to a target hidden behind a hedgerow. Training was rushed. A man had to develop an eye for distance under bullets, where time was measured in seconds. A miss by a few degrees could make the grenade fall short of the enemy trench, or strike branches and shower friends with fragments. Often the shot was blind, guided by luck. Every shot also had a physical price that the shooter felt in his joints. The recoil of a rifle grenade could dislocate a shoulder if the soldier forgot to brace the stock against the ground. The propelling charge sent a violent impulse straight into the collarbone. Infantrymen who fired several shots from the hands by mistake often left the line injured. The M7 also wore out the rifle. The barrel failed faster, bullet accuracy declined, and the construction loosened. The fighter was trapped. He could carry a heavier, less handy rifle, or risk not attaching the launcher in time. While he fumbled with the grenade, he could not fire bullets, and for a few dangerous seconds he became an exposed target. A platoon pinned down under fire might have only one way out: put the 7 into the embrasure. Ordinary rifle fire solved almost nothing. Bullets vanished into earth, branches, and the thick green wall behind which a German machine gun fired short, calculated bursts. The bocage turned every position into a small fortress. The enemy was close, yet unreachable by a direct shot. Distance in Normandy was measured not in meters, but in obstacles. A man could be 20 paces from the enemy and still have no way to hit him with a rifle. Between them stood banks, brush, trunks, stone fences, and narrow passages swept by machine guns. Each squad acquired its own artilleryman. His task was to suppress the machine gun while the others tried to close with the position. He was no poster hero, but at that moment everyone watched him. While riflemen pressed themselves to the ground, he had to choose an angle, set the rifle, estimate the distance, and send the grenade where no hand could throw it. This changed the group. The infantryman with the M7 became the bearer of the only chance to move the fight off dead center. Men covered him, cleared space for him, handed him the last grenades, and kept near him those who could suppress a German flash. The platoon breathed around one barrel turned into a primitive mortar. Importance brought vulnerability. The man with the M7 became a priority target. Germans quickly learned the silhouette of the attachment and fired at such shooters first. The device at the muzzle changed the fighter's appearance and made him visible to experienced observers. An ordinary rifleman blended into the mass. The grenadier stood out as a threat to be removed. If the artilleryman was killed, the squad could be helpless before a machine gun behind the hedge. Without the M7, men had to crawl, search for a flank, wait for mortars, or storm a swept passage. In Normandy, every extra meter under machine gun fire cost blood. The shooter with the 7 lived in contradiction. His job demanded that he rise above the others, look out, raise the rifle, and take a second to aim. In that same second, he became the most visible man on the field. His work saved the squad, but it also invited a bullet. The platoon needed him as a battery needs a gunner, except here all artillery sat on the end of a rifle barrel. The Germans were not passive targets. They began hunting those who carried the 7s. They adapted quickly. Once they understood that plunging fire could drive them from cover, machine gun crews changed positions after every M7 shot. A point that had seemed suppressed could come alive from another flank. In bocage warfare, staying still was deadly for both sides. Americans searched for nests by muzzle flashes, sound, and cut branches. Germans learned not to linger where a grenade might arrive. A crew could fire, shift to another slit in the hedge, crawl behind a second bank, or let the Americans move closer before striking from a new point. The M7 forced movement, but it did not make the enemy helpless. The Germans also used their own rifle grenades, Gewehrgranaten, often more refined than American analogues. German infantry understood the value of portable explosive power. Their grenades could strike shelters, groups of infantry, and light vehicles, and trained riflemen could turn a rifle into a precise plunging weapon. The Americans did not face a primitive defense, but an army that understood field engineering. A strange balance emerged. Both sides turned rifles into hand mortars, making every meter of Normandy a zone where any bush could become the source of an explosion. Infantry combat lost its old simplicity. The battle became nervous and ragged. After each blast, men tried to understand where it had come from. After each M7 shot, the German crew could vanish or answer with its own grenade. Minutes might pass in silence, then both sides exchanged explosions across the green wall without seeing each other's faces. This was a war of hearing, intuition, and instant decisions. The American grenadier had not only to hit the target, he had to guess where it would be in a few seconds. If the machine gunner shifted, the grenade struck empty ground. If the shooter delayed, the enemy left or fired first. On paper, the M7 gave an advantage. In reality, that advantage required experience, composure, and good supply. German defenders used false flashes, short provocative bursts, and reserve positions. They made Americans waste grenades, reveal shooters, then struck from another point. The bocage offered many shelters, and one hedgerow could hide not one position, but a system of passages, cells, and spare firing slits. Thus, the M7 changed from a simple attachment into part of a tactical duel. It was no magic key to German defense, only an argument to which the enemy answered with his own argument. Victory went not to the side with the formerly better device, but to the side that saw changes faster and used the last chance before the enemy disappeared. The most dangerous moment came when the American ran out of ammunition at the very time he needed it. Supply in Normandy lived by its own logic. Instead of requested grenades, empty crates or wrong loads could reach the front. On paper, everything looked orderly: requests, norms, depots, columns, distribution. At the hedgerow, the picture was different. What one squad needed might be stuck dozens of kilometers away, mixed up during unloading, or sent to a luckier unit. Rifle grenade ammunition reached the line on a leftover basis, lost in depots and traffic jams. Norman roads were not built for an army that had to advance, feed men, deliver fuel, move artillery, evacuate wounded, and supply special ammunition all at once. In that crush, rifle grenades became an extra line on a list. Weight was another enemy. One rifle grenade weighed about 700 grams, and the infantryman was already overloaded with cartridges, canteen, rations, entrenching tool, grenades, shelter half, personal items, and sometimes equipment for a comrade. Each grenade was not abstract combat power, but weight on straps and shoulders. During endless marches through mud, that weight became torture. Mud pulled boots down, rain-soaked cloth, straps rubbed skin, and the soldier still had to reach the next hedge, farm, or bend. Ammunition that seemed wise in the morning could become hateful by evening, especially if unused. Soldiers had to choose food or 2 grenades that might never be needed. It was not comfort against combat, but one form of survival against another. Food helped a man last a day. A grenade could save the squad in 10 seconds. No one knew which need would become decisive. Normandy forced the infantryman to be rifleman, porter, and tactician of his own load. There was also confusion with blank cartridges. Without the correct launching charge, the rifle grenade meant nothing. With a live cartridge, it could become deadly for shooter and weapon. In mud, darkness, and panic, sorting them was not as simple as the manual suggested. Any mistake turned a helper into a threat. Many platoons went into position with a bare attachment and only a couple of grenades, hoping it would be enough. Hope became part of the ammunition load. A commander could plan to suppress a German point, but the plan collapsed if the shooter had 1 grenade left or no correct cartridge. Then men again asked for mortars, waited for a tank, searched for a way around, or moved forward under fire. The M7 required a chain, attachment, functioning rifle, suitable grenades, blanks, trained shooter, and the ability to bring all of it to the fight. If one link failed, the pocket artillery became useless metal. At the front, such failures did not look like logistics. They looked like another task left undone and another casualty. Supply thus became the invisible enemy of the American grenadier. A German machine gun could be suppressed only when all necessary items met in one place at one moment. If not, the soldier with the M7 became a symbol of unrealized possibility. The weapon existed, the task existed, the target existed, but the decisive ammunition was missing. The infantryman also stopped feeling like a simple rifleman. The attachment changed the weapon's balance, aim, and handling. A rifle that once felt like an extension of the shoulder became a bulky system with a new center of gravity and special logic. The shooter had to remember a sequence on which the squad's life depended. Fix the grenade, check the cartridge, choose the angle, hold the weapon, avoid spoiling the shot, judge the distance. Under fire, these operations became a test of nerves. On paper, the instruction was simple. In mud, blood, screams, and machine gun bursts, every movement grew heavy. The risk of a grenade detonating in his hands because of a faulty detonator kept soldiers tense. Even if such accidents were not daily events, the possibility changed the attitude toward the weapon. The man held not just ammunition, but a small shell meant to fly forward, yet theoretically able to kill the launcher. Fear of failure was not cowardice, but a normal reaction to a device operating near the edge of what was acceptable. The rifle stopped being a faithful partner and became a capricious mechanism. Moisture could cause a misfire of the blank or ruin the launching charge. For the M7, a misfire at the decisive moment meant failure of the whole tactical task. The squad waited for an explosion behind the hedge and received an empty second while the German machine gun kept firing. The fighter feared not only bullets, but the thought that his mini-artillery would fail when the machine gun began mowing down the squad. This was fear for everyone depending on his shot. If an ordinary rifleman missed, he might try again. If the grenadier lost the one chance to suppress a position, a chain disaster could follow. Wounded men, halted attack, support request, another attempt through the same swept ground. The attachment also made ordinary handling harder. The rifle became longer, heavier, and easier to snag in bushes and breaches. It demanded caution and constant awareness that the muzzle carried not a harmless detail, but a tool expected to explode. In close combat, the weapon was no longer fully a rifle, yet not quite a true grenade launcher. In the end, the carbine demanded endless care just to preserve the chance of firing. It had to be protected from dirt, checked for attachment, watched for cartridges, supplied with correct ammunition, and guarded from damage. The soldier already had to survive rain, fire, and movement. Now he received another duty. Psychologically, the M7 broke the familiar role of the infantryman. He had to think like a mortarman, carry weight like a porter, maintain equipment like a mechanic, and risk himself like an assault fighter. Functions once spread among crews were loaded onto one man. Convenient for the army, this was heavy for the shoulder and mind. Thus, the M7 became both weapon and mental burden. It forced constant calculation, checking, doubt, and rapid decisions. In theory, it expanded the squad's power. In practice, it made one fighter the bottleneck of the attack. If he misjudged, if a wet cartridge failed, if the grenade went wide, the advance could choke at the next green wall. After Normandy, one lesson was clear: the future war would be a war of grenade launchers. The M7 allowed American infantry to gnaw through defense, but its effectiveness cost lives. It was not perfect, did not replace artillery, and did not make infantry all-powerful. Yet it showed the essential need. The frontline soldier required his own way to hit a target behind cover, without waiting for heavy support to find time and coordinates. The Pentagon drew conclusions. The infantryman should not depend on improvised attachments forever. He needed a true weapon. The rifle grenade was transitional, an attempt to make an old rifle solve new tasks. It worked, but with inconvenience, risk, and dependence on ammunition. The history of the M7 is the history of an army plugging gaps with what was at hand. Normandy's bocage made that logic brutally visible. American infantry met defenses that could not be simply shot apart. Explosives had to be thrown over obstacles, crews driven from behind corners, and the enemy's confidence in cover destroyed. The M7 provided that possibility in rough, dangerous form. By 1944, grenades were as important as cartridges, yet the system remained a crutch. If grenades were missing, blanks confused, or the shooter killed first, the whole concept collapsed. A weapon that could change a fight depended on too many accidents. This piece of iron on the barrel changed infantry combat. In the chaos of Normandy, the man who could throw a projectile accurately around a corner could decide the fight. Even a small group could try to suppress a point that once required a mortar or tank. This gave initiative, and in the tight war among hedgerows, initiative often outweighed numbers. But the price was dark. The shooter with the M7 carried not only a weapon, but the expectations of others. He had to hit while comrades lay under fire, save ammunition when supply failed, and stay calm when German bullets sought him first. The squad's victory might depend on one man and one grenade crossing the hedge. Normandy became a proving ground where America learned that industrial power is useless if a soldier cannot reach the enemy behind a hedgerow. Thousands of tanks, ships, and aircraft could exist, but a specific fight near a farm depended on whether an infantryman could hit a machine gun hidden behind an earthen bank. Big war compressed into the short path of a grenade flying from a rifle. The M7 was a forced solution, inventive, deadly, and dangerous. It arose because infantry needed more power without waiting for heavy support. Its value lay not in perfection, but in being present when no other answer existed. During this period, personal weapons turned into miniature artillery. The rifle was no longer only a means of precise fire at a visible target. It became a platform for explosive force, a way to deceive cover, and a tool that placed the power of a shell into the hands of an ordinary fighter. This was a step toward a future in which the grenade launcher would become not a rare attachment, but a permanent part of infantry power. Victory was won not only by super technologies, but by the infantryman's ability to turn a piece of metal on the barrel into his strongest argument. The brutal practicality of war was hidden in that detail. If the enemy is invisible, reach him with an explosion. If artillery is far away, create small artillery yourself. If the road is closed, punch one passage. The history of the M7 remembers seconds missing for reloading when the enemy was too close, shooters raising rifles above grass and becoming first targets, platoons waiting for one shot to silence an embrasure. grenades too heavy on the march and priceless in battle. The M7 was not a legend in the usual sense. It did not look like an independent weapon or promise a heroic image, but such solutions often change war more deeply than loud symbols. They appear from shortage, pain, and urgent necessity, then force armies to reconsider the future. The 7 showed that the infantryman needed not only a rifle, but the ability to strike where the rifle could not reach. That was its main lesson. Modern combat is won by the one who can hit the enemy, not where he is visible, but where he is hiding. It turned a rifleman into a gunner, a porter, and a target at once, revealing that survival in Normandy depended as much on improvisation as on courage, supply, and nerve.